1.1 million motorists will have to pass an air care inspection. The air care program, quite obviously, is designed to improve the air quality in the Lower Mainland.
We decided to take a clean sheet of paper, do a new motor car, and that became the MVB.
Motoring 93 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil. And Midas, your under-the-car specialists for imports and domestics.
Vancouver, British Columbia, the fastest growing city in Canada. Hello everybody and welcome to Motoring 93. You know, it's not hard to understand why the population is growing so quickly out here in Vancouver. Vancouverites are proud of the quality of life their city has to offer, not to mention the quality of the air, that mountain air. Well, we're here this week to learn about a new program aimed at keeping the air in British Columbia pollution-free.
British Columbia has introduced tough new anti-pollution rules for automobiles. There are currently 11 air care centers in the province, and as of September 1st, 1992, British Columbians were obligated to take their vehicles in for inspection. Failure to do so results in drivers being unable to renew their licenses until the standards are met.
The air care program, quite obviously, is designed to improve the air quality in the Lower Mainland. And the way that it affects motorists is that 1.1 million motorists from Lions Bay to the Chilliwack area, which is basically the Lower Mainland, will have to pass an air care inspection sometime throughout the year. I guess the key point here is this is tied to their month-end renewal of their license and insurance registration process. So in fact, since we have Crown Corporation, ICBC, in the province, all of these motorists will have to comply with the program.
We've run 2 months of voluntary testing through 2 centers. We've done about 11,000 vehicles totally. And quite frankly, the response has been very, very positive, even though we had some very high fail rates, considerably high, in excess of 40%. What the people have been telling us is that they don't necessarily like spending a lot of money and trying to fix their vehicles, but they do realize that it's very necessary, that 89% of the public is solidly behind the program. They've said it's needed and they support it, albeit they haven't had to go through a test yet, and that attitude might change a little bit, but it's very consistent regardless of whether we've done that survey at the inspection lane or whether we've done the survey over the telephone.
We're checking for components of the vehicles by manufacturer. So if those components were there, that's what we're checking for. Then we're checking the emissions on the exhaust. We'll do a couple tests on the dyne, which is our position 3. And we'll test out what exhaust is coming through the tailpipe. And then from there, it's position 4, which they get the results. The fee is paid $15 plus GST, which is $16.05. That's for both pass and fail.
What happens if you fail?
If you fail, there's another a number of scenarios that can occur. You have a conditional pass. You can go see a qualified air care technician. You could also call your auto plan agent or a hotline number, or you may do what you like. We cannot dictate where to go to. It's conflict of interest. So we're just a test facility, not a repair service. So if the vehicle does fail, they can go out, get it fixed, come back in, and they can get a conditional pass. If they have to pay again another $16.05 for the second time coming through.
If I bring my car in and I fail, you don't take my keys away?
No, we do not, no. The government will also, or the ICBC people, will also issue you a 3-month license, interim license, so there's plenty of time to get that done. There's also a fixed rate of what you can spend. It's with $200 maximum to get your vehicle fixed.
One beneficiary of air care will be the auto service industry, now suffering the recessionary blues. Midas Muffler, for example, was first out of the gate, advertising its catalytic converter service.
I think it's an excellent opportunity for us. We look at it as a great business opportunity, but we also looked at the fact that we were able to do something for the general population out here who are affected by air care. We took our catalytic converters, went back to the manufacturer, we negotiated a better price, and we were able to come out with prices that were approximately 30 to 50% lower than the OEM prices for these converters. So I think we did quite well with it.
For a business like yourself, what does it mean or what could it mean?
Well, it could mean a lot of business for us because there's a lot of vehicles out there I know that have been taken off the converters in previous years. And with the price of these universal converters now, they're about half the price of an OEM one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a considerable savings, as well as, there's a lot of vehicles out there that need it.
It's an 81 Volkswagen Scirocco, and not nervous at all, just because it's a Volkswagen, so.
You're a big Volkswagen fan?
Yeah, it's all I've ever driven, all I ever will drive, so.
And you're gonna pass this test?
Yeah, of course. 1981 Volkswagen Scirocco, 167,000 kilometers, and I passed, no problems. And it needs a tune-up and a new muffler. Now, come on, guy, buy Volkswagen. Get a Bug, okay? They're the best cars. Just think about it.
So it appears most British Columbians are behind the Air Care program, but some still have reservations.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of reaction when they really do find out the problems that can exist, such as why should we have to have the small hole in the gas tank now when you can't buy leaded gas in Canada, or at least in British Columbia.
So you have to change that too?
Yeah.
But do you like the overall cause? I mean, the reason...
Oh, I'm not against the tailpipe emission at all. I mean, just let me meet it with new modern methods rather than hanging a bunch of stuff on my old engine, because it's been proven you don't have to run with all these air pumps and stuff if you build the engine right.
But whenever anybody has to do anything that's mandatory, and when it is a government program, there always tends to be a little bit of backlash. But I guess in the Lower Mainland here, we have such a responsive public in terms of environmental initiatives that we have had an overwhelmingly positive response to the program here.
Following Motoring 93's visit, changes were made to the inspection criteria. Now, only 1985 and older vehicles require an Air Care inspection before license and insurance renewal.
During the pylon test, the car tracked a very precise line with minimal understeer. This only becoming evident when the car is really pushed.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we look at the 1993 Volvo 850, a brand new designation for a brand new car. Now, this Volvo is unlike any other Volvo ever sold in North America before. The reason being, it just happens to be front-wheel drive. The 850 Volvo is about as new gets, the engine, transmission, suspension and front-wheel drive format all being totally new. The 2.5-litre inline-5 engine is the second in a series of new modular engines. The modular concept helps eliminate a lot of costs for both the manufacturer and dealer alike. The reason being that a whole series of engines share many internal components. This engine, for instance, uses the same pistons, conrods, valves, etc. as the larger inline-6 found in the 960 Volvo. Power is rated at 168 horses and 162 pounds-feet of torque. Volvo's variable induction system, a system that uses two airtight runners of differing length, ensures available power is delivered at desirable engine speeds. That said, the car could do with a little more low-end punch. Matched with this engine is a totally new 5-speed manual transmission. All in all, a very user-friendly unit. The throws are compact and the feel precise. The clutch is, by any standards, good. Its action is smooth and light. The big plus with this new tranny is that they have ditched that dumb Laycock overdrive system found in many other manual Volvos. 0 to 100k times are accomplished in about 9 seconds, and during the test we achieved a commendable 9.2 litres per 100 kilometres. The suspension found in the Volvo is also new. Up front are the usual McPherson struts, in the rear is a new semi-independent Delta Link design. The Delta Link setup combines semi-trailing arms with a beam axle in one. The beauty of the design is that it imparts a degree of passive rear-wheel steering. During the pylon test, the car tracked a very precise line with minimal understeer.
this only becoming evident when the car is really pushed. On the road, the car's manners and comfort can only be described as impeccable.
Not only is the trunk on this car positively huge, it's also incredibly versatile. Now, I've folded down the center armrest to reveal the ski pass-through, but if you need to put longer or larger, bulkier items in, you can fold down either or both halves of the split folding rear seat. Now, to improve trunk security, what they've done, you can lock both halves of the seat in the upright position and give the guy at the hotel the valet key. Great idea. This car features Volvo's side impact protection system. Now, in a nutshell, what they've done, they've strengthened the door sills, the B-pillar, the A-pillar and the roofline, as well as adding a second impact member in the door. Now, the unique part of the system are two bars that run from the door sill to the center tunnel and then from there to the other door sill. Now, in the event of a T-bone type accident, in a regular car where the seat is bolted to the floor, as the side of the car comes in, it hits the passenger. With this system, because the seat is mounted to these two bars, the two move in unison. The thing is, the passengers are going to be a lot safer in this style of vehicle than anyone else's. Now, I've keyed on the safety aspects of the 850 throughout the road test. There's one item left that as a parent I found very appealing. This car has a child seat that folds out of the center armrest. And as you can see, my daughter is seated very comfortably in it.
Inside, the Swedish people's car is loaded. You'll find everything from power windows, locks, mirrors and a sunroof to dual climate controls. The nice thing being that everything has a substantial feel and is the model of simplicity. The radio, for instance, not only delivers wonderful sound quality, but the fact that the buttons are large enough to operate with gloves on is a rarity in today's car. The radio, by the way, also features a tape player and trunk-mounted compact disc player.
Well, that wraps up this week's test drive with the exception of my pet peeve. What on earth has taken Volvo so long to produce such a nice car? Now, in the past, I haven't made much of a secret of the fact that I'm not a Volvo fan. However, this car has just turned me into one, and in a hurry too.
Next week on Test Drive, we'll take a look at the totally revamped Elantra.
Earlier in the program, during our feature on air care, we heard a lot about catalytic converters. But what are they? How do they work? And how do they have an effect on your car's emissions? Well, let's ask the man who knows everything there is to know about what's under the hood of your car. And that, of course, is Bill Gardner.
Okay, Brad, you want to know more about catalytic converters? Well, they've been around since 1975 when GM brought them out on their cars and light trucks. Now, why do we need them? Well, one of the important things to remember is that although engines have increased in efficiency by leaps and bounds in the last few years, gasoline-fueled internal combustion engines like we have in cars and light trucks are still very inefficient. They have a lot of toxic gases in their exhaust stream, and the converter is kind of a cleanup crew to take care of those. Now, we've got a GM pickup truck on the hoist today, and you can see the catalytic converter. It's this item right here. It's an integral part of the truck's exhaust system and its emission control system. And a lot of passenger cars have one very similar to this as well. Now, I have a cutaway of another catalytic converter right in front of me. This is called a monolithic three-way converter. Now, it looks quite different in size and shape than that other converter we just saw in the pickup truck. It gets the monolith name from that honeycomb design that's visible through the inlet pipe. Now, through our cutaway window, you can see the front section of the converter, the monolith right down there, and you can get a glimpse of that rear section as well and some of that honeycomb or monolith design. Now, it has an air injection port here on the side, and fresh air is injected through this port, and that's one of the important criteria that keeps this converter operating properly and gives it long life. Now, there's no direct maintenance to a catalytic converter. Instead, what you do is maintain the engine on your car or truck in a proper state of tune. If it's running well and efficiently, the converter will work well and last a long time. Now, these things are warranted by the manufacturers for 5 years or 80,000 kilometers, so they're made quite well. Usually a stainless steel shell, and they have some precious metals in them like platinum, rhodium, and palladium. Now, this converter takes carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, and oxides of nitrogen that the engine produces, and it reduces them and converts them. And it's very important, to, as I mentioned earlier, to keep your engine in the proper state of tune or this converter won't last. It operates at a very high temperature between 9 and 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 93.
Peterborough, Ontario was the site for what could be described as an MGB love-in. Although production of the MGB ended in 1984, it's obvious the love affair is still going strong as hundreds of people from across North America showed up to admire the MGs and swap stories from the good old days.
It's the largest MG show ever put on by a car club in North America. There's one show which is in Grand Rapids, generally in the end of August. Last year they had 518 cars. We haven't done our count yet. We don't know if we beat them, but definitely any other car club in North America, this is the largest ever. We have people up here this weekend that, obviously trailered the cars up behind the Jaguar. We've also got people that brought their Rusty Bee out and are camping because, they're not necessarily affluent. The MG movement is basically, it's a camaraderie. We get together a couple of times a year. People come drive from Chicago and whatever to different conventions all over North America, and they know each other, they have a good time. They're part of almost like a cult, and it's a great cult, it's a fun cult. Basically, we've got some of what we call triple M cars, which is the exotic early MGs. A lot of T-types are here, and of course the MGB, this is the 30th anniversary of the designing of it. We have the designer with us this weekend, and also we have hundreds and hundreds of his cars, his design here.
I came to the MG Car Company in 1956 from Aston Martin when the MGA was in production, and I did some work on the MGA and on the twin cam, and I remember the Le Mans Coupe for Ted Lund, which ran in '63. But then we were looking for a replacement and did some body styling exercises to do a new body shell on the MGA chassis. But we were restricted by the size and depth of the chassis members. So we decided to take a clean sheet of paper, do a new motor car with a mono-construction, and that became the MGB.
And I'm watching this lady back up.
Yeah.
Right into the grill.
What is it about this car that makes people so dedicated to it as buyers?
I wish I knew, because we'd have done one a lot earlier. It's one of the things that has just happened. The shapes came right. It's one of those designs which has always looked right. And we were very lucky because we built the Tourer, which ran for 4 years, and then the GT version, Farina did that little roof style for us based on some lines I did. And that was just right as well. And it's one of those things that just happens sometimes. I'm surprised when I come over here. We see lots of cars in England, and I come over here and they're even better. And people really look after them, they're proud of them, and they just want to talk about them all the time.
You just put a new motor in there? Just keep it clean.
A big hit at the show was the MGTC. It was built in the mid-40s, replaced the MGTB, and put British sports cars on the market in North America.
Basically a fun car, but at the same time, we wanted to maintain the originality. So a lot of down to the nuts and bolts on this car are the original nuts and bolts. In terms of purchasing a vehicle to start with and winding up with something in this condition, it would be close to $35,000 and $40,000.
The other point I made yesterday too is if you have a 77 newer car, you should have one of these in your glove compartment. Okay? It's the ignition relay. And the same part back here someplace is your starter relay. It's the same part, but you should carry a spare because they fail. And if this one fails, you're dead on the side of the road.
There's a nice history with this car. I bought it when I was overseas, when I was stationed in the Air Force, okay? And
I not only got a car, but after I got the car, I got a wife. And she's right from the town of Abingdon, where the cars were made.
Sergio Finesca is from South America, a continent with only about 500 MGs on the road.
Why didn't you leave your MGs in Argentina?
Well, because I cannot live without my MGs. I brought them here because I'm going to be here 5 years, and that's a long time without my MGs.
Meanwhile, it's good and bad news for North American MG lovers. A V8 MG is coming out this year, but it won't be available in North America. The reason? It would be too costly to bring the car up to North American safety standards. It won't exactly be cheap in England with a price tag of £50,000 or $100,000 Canadian.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns tire pressure. It's very important for the best handling, safety, and economy of your vehicle to have the correct tire inflation pressure in all 4 tires. Buy yourself a good tire pressure gauge and keep it clipped to the sun visor so it's always handy. When you want to find out the correct tire pressure, consult the decal on the car. It tells you, in this case, 35 psi front and rear, but there's quite often a difference between front and rear tire pressure, so make sure you check this decal. It also tells us the spare should be 60 psi, and it gives us the tire size when we're replacing tires. The Space Saver spare in today's cars, it's very important to keep it up to pressure, and that's always happens to be 60 psi. If it's not up to pressure, it won't do the job when you need it the most. That's your Midas tip of the week.
Looking for some clean, fresh air? Well, either move out here to the country or sniff the tailpipe of a brand new car. I'll be right back.
Kenzies Corner with Jim Kenzie.
Now, I live out here in the country, and part of the reason is that clean, fresh country air. Now, maybe it's not as pure as I think it is, but it's a whole lot better than it is in our cities. Part of the reason for our air quality problems, I hate to say it, is automobiles. Now, old clunkers like this 1969 MGB over here used to emit all sorts of horrible stuff into the atmosphere. Now, this one doesn't anymore because it doesn't run. But there are thousands of little polluters running around the country as we speak. Now, in British Columbia, as we saw earlier in the show, they're starting to do something about this with mandatory emissions testing for all cars. Now, some people are upset about this because it's going to cost them money and may even require them to throw their old car out altogether and buy a new one. And no matter how much good this system does, it'll do nothing for the factory smoke and chemical plant spills and sawmill emissions that are today a bigger part of the environmental degradation. And that's because new cars, like this one over here, emit far fewer pollutants than they used to. In fact, I saw one demonstration where a brand new car like this had its air intake hooked up to the exhaust pipe of an old smoker like that. And the exhaust coming out of this car was actually cleaner than the air going into its engine. Well, maybe that's the solution to Vancouver's air quality problems. Give everybody a brand new car and just have them drive around for a little bit. Then maybe their air would smell as sweet as it does out here. I'm Jim Kenzie.
You're looking out on English Bay off the shores of Vancouver. It acts as a sort of a parking lot all year round for ships from around the world. You know, it should be interesting to see if the Air Care program introduced here in British Columbia makes its way across the country. We'll soon find out. Well, that's it for this week. We'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Motoring 93 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, One Tough Motor Oil, and Midas, your under-the-car specialists for imports and domestics.